I freeze as Holden shreds what he thinks are the final property documents. My jaw tightens. My pulse races. I don't move. I smile internally. He doesn't know I have the originals. The paper cuts through the machine with a mechanical whine. His face shows pure satisfaction. He thinks he's won. He thinks he's erased the evidence that could stop him from taking everything Dad left behind. My hands grip the edge of the table. I can feel the weight of the manila folder hidden in my apartment, 3 miles away. Those documents are real. They're signed. They're dated. They're mine. Holden pulls another stack from the cardboard box, and my stomach twists. These are copies. Thank God they're just copies. But he doesn't know that. He believes he's destroying the only proof that could challenge his authority over Dad's entire estate. His hands move confidently, almost gleefully. He's the golden boy. He's always been the golden boy. And now he thinks he's finally taken what should have been his all along. I bite my tongue and watch. My aunts sit silently, pretending not to notice. Their eyes flicker toward me, then away. I realize everyone is complicit in believing Holden's lies. I make a mental note. This is my first battlefield. Aunt Vivian adjusts her pearl necklace and looks out the window. Aunt Michelle stirs her coffee slowly, deliberately keeping her gaze down. Neither of them speaks up. Neither of them says, "Wait, shouldn't we verify those documents?" Neither of them questions Holden's authority. They've already accepted his version of the truth. Understand now. They want to believe him. It's easier that way. Holden is charming. He's confident. He presents himself as someone who belongs in control. Meanwhile, I'm the quiet one. The overlooked one. The one who works in accounting and keeps to herself. Why would they doubt him? But they know something isn't right. I can see it in their hesitation. The way Aunt Patricia's jaw tightens. The way Aunt Michelle won't meet my eyes. They've noticed the gap between Holden's story and reality. They just don't have the courage to challenge him. That's fine. I'll give them proof they can't ignore. I'll give them truth so clear that pretending becomes impossible. For now, I simply nod and take mental notes. I finally speak, my voice calm. Holden, you're very confident. I hope you're prepared. Confusion flashes across his face. I reveal nothing, but the seed of doubt is planted. He stops mid-shred. The machine goes quiet. His eyes narrow as he looks at me for the first time since I walked into the lawyer's office. He studies my face, searching for what I might know. Keep my expression neutral. Peaceful almost. Prepared for what? He asks. His voice carries an edge now. He's uncertain. For the conversations that are coming, I say. I pick up my purse and stand. You seem very sure about those documents being the only ones. I just want to make sure you've considered every possibility. He opens his mouth to respond, but I'm already walking toward the door. I don't give him time to ask more questions. I don't give him the chance to push me for details. I want him thinking. I want him lying awake at night wondering if I know something he doesn't. 'Cause I do know something. I know something he desperately needs to know I don't know. Not yet anyway. I remember Dad handing me the originals years ago. Keep them safe, he said, smiling. I didn't fully understand then. But I knew it was my secret advantage. I was 22. Dad called me into his study on a Tuesday afternoon. He seemed tired that day. Not sick or anything. Just tired. He pulled a manila folder from his desk drawer and placed it in my hands. These are important, Delaney, he said. His eyes were serious. Keep them somewhere safe. Somewhere no one else knows about. I didn't ask questions. Dad was never one to explain himself. He trusted me. That alone meant everything. The folder contained the original deeds to all his properties. 7 buildings across the city. Commercial spaces, apartments, investment properties. Everything. Why me? I asked quietly. Because I can trust you, he replied. You don't talk much. You don't brag. And you actually think before you act. Your brother, he's good at many things. But he rushes. He makes decisions from his ego, not his mind. He kissed my forehead and that was all. He never mentioned it again. 2 years later he had a stroke. 6 months after that he was gone. And suddenly that folder became the most valuable thing I owned. Holden had always been the golden boy. Charming, self-assured, untouchable. I was quiet, overlooked, underestimated. Everyone believed he was the rightful heir. Everyone but me. Growing up, Holden got the attention. He was the athlete. He was the one who made people laugh. He was the one Dad took to business meetings because he wanted to learn the family trade. I stayed home and read. I studied hard. I became an accountant because numbers made sense to me in a way people never did. Mom always introduced him first. This is Holden, our charismatic son. Then, almost as an afterthought. And Delaney. Like I was an addition to the conversation rather than a main character in my own life. But I noticed things. I watched. Paid attention. Holden's charm worked on most people. But it didn't work on Dad. Dad respected competence. Dad respected intelligence. Dad respected loyalty. And I had all three. Holden just had the smile. When Dad got sick, Holden disappeared for weeks at a time. He said he was dealing with business matters, but I knew better. I'd see his Instagram posts from vacation spots across the country. Meanwhile, I was there every single day. Reading to Dad. Managing his medical care. Helping with the paperwork. Dad remembered that. He remembered who showed up. After the family meeting, I quietly catalog every property, checking old records and confirming what Holden thinks he controls. Each discrepancy becomes a weapon in my mind. I spent 3 hours at City Hall. The clerk didn't recognize me. She didn't know I was a woman on a mission. I pulled up every property listing Dad ever owned. I wrote down address, square footage, current valuation, ownership status. 7 properties total, just like the folder said. Then I cross-checked with Holden's claim. He said he controlled all 7. But according to the city records, 5 of them still required dual signature for any major transaction. 5 of them. That meant Holden couldn't sell them alone. He couldn't refinance them alone. He couldn't do anything with them without my signature. He didn't know that. He thought those copies he destroyed were the final proof. He thought he'd erased the only evidence of the dual ownership clause. But the city had copies. The bank had copies. The lawyer had copies. And I had the originals. I sat in my car in the parking lot and smiled for the first time in days. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. I had information he didn't have. I had leverage he didn't know existed. All I had to do was play this correctly. Holden brags to everyone, flaunting his control of the estate. I watch him, noting every lie, every exaggeration. He doesn't see me smiling in the corner. I saw his Instagram post. A photo of him standing in front of the largest building, the commercial complex worth $12 million. Caption. Finally got control of the legacy. Time to make some real moves in this family. I watched the comments roll in. Congratulations. So proud of you, man. You deserve this. The narrative was setting itself. Everyone believed he was in charge. Everyone believed he was the decision maker. He went to family dinners and told stories about his plans. New renovations. Property development. A major sale he was considering. My aunts listened with admiration. My cousins looked impressed. Nobody questioned him. Nobody asked for details or proof. I showed up to those dinners and said almost nothing. Ate my food. I smiled when appropriate. I listened. I took mental notes of every lie he told, every exaggeration he made. He was building a house of cards, and I had the fan that would blow it down. The best part was that he had no idea I was planning anything. He thought I'd accepted his authority. He thought I'd given up without a fight. He was so confident in his own charm that he never considered I might be smarter than him. I quietly consult a lawyer, without Holden knowing, just to confirm that the originals give me full legal authority. Everything I need to win is already mine. Her office was on the 15th floor of a downtown building. glass and steel and the smell of expensive leather chairs. I brought the original folder in my backpack like it was just my laptop. Margaret Voss was Dad's attorney before he died. She knew me. She knew Holden. She knew the estate. "These originals give you equal authority," she said, pushing her glasses up her nose. "Your father was very clear about this. Dual signatures required for any major transaction. Your brother can't sell, refinance, or lease any of these properties without you." I felt something release in my chest. I wasn't making this up. I wasn't imagining a legal advantage that didn't exist. It was real. It was solid. It was ironclad. "Can he claim sole ownership if the papers get destroyed?" Yes. She shook her head firmly. "Not if there are other copies on file." Which there are. With the city, with the bank, with my office. Copies are binding as long as they're certified. The originals just give you the strongest position. I left her office feeling like I'd been given permission to do what I'd already decided to do. I had ammunition. Real, legal, legitimate ammunition. Now I just had to wait for the right moment to use it. I began subtle moves. Removing Holden's documents from meetings, pointing out minor mistakes in front of family, letting his arrogance trip him up. No one suspects I'm planning anything. At the next family gathering, I mentioned the City Hall records. Casually. Over dinner, I said to Aunt Vivian. "I was curious about the properties," I said to Aunt Vivian. "So I looked them up. Did you know the commercial building has a dual ownership clause?" "That's interesting." Holden's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "What do you mean, dual ownership?" "Just that according to the deed filed with the city, any major transaction needs both signatures," I said. "I'm sure it's just a legal detail Dad set up years ago." He laughed nervously. "Yeah, well, I can handle that." "Of course," I said. "I'm not saying you can't. Just an interesting detail." That night, he called Margaret Voss. I knew because I saw his call history later when I was at the family house looking through old files. He was asking questions. He was worried. But a week later, I corrected a mistake he made during a property discussion. Just a small error about square footage. But I corrected it in front of 3 family members. His face flushed. He didn't like being wrong. He didn't like being challenged. The seeds were growing. Holden signs a contract, thinking I'm unaware. I quietly record the discrepancies and inconsistencies. I have everything he doesn't. He has overplayed his hand. My cousin told me about the contract. A potential buyer for one of the commercial spaces. A legitimate offer. Holden was ready to sign without me. I requested a copy from the realtor. She sent it without question. I read through every word. The contract was real. The offer was legitimate. But it didn't include the dual signature clause. It presented Holden as the sole decision-maker. That's when I knew he was going to try something illegal. He was going to try to sell a property that didn't belong to him alone. He was going to forge my signature or pretend it didn't matter or try to finalize the deal before I could stop him. I made copies of the contract. I highlighted the discrepancies. I created a timeline showing when he signed it, when he tried to move forward with it, and when the buyer was supposed to get final approval. If he went through with this, I had evidence of fraud. I had documentation of his illegal actions. I had the smoking gun. But I didn't move yet. I let him think he was winning. I let him push forward with his plan. I watched him walk straight into the trap he was building for himself. I start letting family members notice tiny inconsistencies. Casual comment here, a question there. Seeds of doubt grow quietly, invisibly. "Did you know the buyer for that commercial space?" I asked Aunt Michelle over coffee. "I think Holden mentioned it," she said. "Interesting. I just wondered if we should verify the terms. Make sure the contract follows all of Dad's guidelines." She looked uncomfortable. "I'm sure Holden knows what he's doing." "Of course," I said. "I'm just being careful." At a family dinner, I casually mentioned that I'd received a call from the bank about one of the properties. They needed my signature on some refinancing papers, I said. Just routine stuff. But it's good they check, right? Better to be thorough. I watched Holden's face go pale. He realized then that the bank didn't recognize his sole authority. They knew about the dual signature clause. They were checking with me. The whispers started. My cousin asked Holden if everything was okay with the properties. My uncle mentioned that it was smart Dad set up backup plans. Aunt Patricia started asking more questions about specific deeds and ownership structures. I'd planted the seeds. Now they were starting to grow. Holden tries to intimidate me in front of a lawyer. I don't flinch. I let him speak, nod politely, and store his every word. He underestimates me completely. He scheduled a meeting with Margaret Voss and demanded I attend. He brought documentation showing his claimed control. He presented it like he had everything figured out. He looked confident. He looked like someone in charge. My sister has been making things difficult, he said, gesturing toward me. She's questioning my authority over the estate. But our father clearly intended for me to be in charge. I said nothing. Just listened. She's trying to undermine me, he continued. And frankly, Margaret, I think her holding on to those original documents is just spite. She's jealous I got the active role in managing the properties. Margaret looked at me. I nodded slightly, giving her permission to tell him the truth. Actually, Holden, your father was very specific about the dual signature clause, Margaret said. He wanted both of you involved in major decisions. That was his intention. Delaney isn't undermining you. She's protecting what your father set up. His face flushed red. This is ridiculous. I'm calling another lawyer. Of course, I said quietly. That's your right. He stormed out. But his anger just confirmed what I already knew. He didn't have a real position. He had bluster. And bluster doesn't stand up in court. I reveal small pieces of the original documents to a trusted lawyer. Enough to show discrepancies, not the full truth. Holden senses something but doesn't know what. I didn't want to play all my cards at once. I wanted Holden to panic slowly. I wanted him to make mistakes while he was panicking. So I had Margaret send him a letter. Legal letter. It was professional and polite, but it basically said, the undersigned confirms that dual signatures are required for any major transaction involving the Thompson estate properties. She didn't show him the originals. She didn't reveal all of my evidence. She just confirmed that the clause existed and that he couldn't proceed without me. He tried to call me. I didn't answer. He texted. I didn't respond. He showed up at my apartment. I didn't let him in. I could see the panic setting in. He was realizing that his plan wasn't as solid as he thought. He was understanding that I wasn't going to just roll over. He was starting to understand that I had leverage. But panic makes people stupid. And Holden was about to prove that. Holden's lies start to unravel. Minor errors in property titles appear in official records. I remain calm, letting the dominoes fall without touching them. I didn't have to do anything. The system did the work for me. A bank called Holden asking about the discrepancy on one of the properties. He'd listed himself as sole owner on a refinancing application, but the official city records still showed the dual signature clause. That was a problem. The city assessor's office noticed the inconsistency and flagged it. Someone from their office called Margaret Voss. She called me to ask what was happening. I have no idea, I said. But it seems like Holden might have been presenting false documentation. A buyer for the commercial space backed out because of title issues. Apparently, their lawyer noticed the discrepancy and didn't want to proceed with a sale that had unclear ownership. One by one, the problems multiplied. Each one was small on its own. But together they painted a picture of fraud, of deception, of a man trying to take control of something that didn't legally belong to him alone. I watched it happen from my apartment. I didn't have to lift a finger. Holden's own dishonesty was unraveling on its own. Holden tries to sell a property to a friend, claiming full ownership. I step in quietly, producing original deeds that legally block the transaction. His face goes pale. His friend called me. I didn't know who he was at first. But apparently, Holden had promised to sell him the smallest apartment building for half the market price. Sweetheart deal. Except there was one problem. Holden couldn't sell it without my signature. I'm just calling to verify the terms, the friend said. Make sure everything is legit. It's not, I told him. I don't consent to the sale. Silence on the line. Holden needs my signature for any major transaction, I explained calmly. That's what our father's will states. I'm not consenting to this sale. The friend was angry at first. He thought I was playing games. But when I explained the legal situation, when I described the dual ownership clause, he backed away from the deal. Holden found out and called me furious. You're destroying my credibility, he shouted into the phone. No, I said quietly. You're destroying your own credibility by trying to sell something that isn't yours to sell. I hung up on him before he could respond. Some distant relatives who once ignored me quietly reach out. They've noticed the cracks in Holden's story. I let them know I am in control. No fanfare, just quiet strategy. My cousin Marcus texted me. Hey, what's happening with the properties? People are asking questions. Called him. Dad set up a dual signature clause, I explained. Any major decision about the properties needs both Holden and me. Holden's been trying to act like he has sole control. But he doesn't. Oh, Marcus said. So you have equal say. More than equal, I said. I have the original documents, the legal authority, the proof. He passed that information along. Within days, the entire family knew the truth. Suddenly, the relatives who'd ignored me for years were asking me questions, wanting my perspective, treating me with respect. Aunt Vivian called. We should probably have a family meeting, she said carefully. I think that's wise, I replied. My uncle sent me a text. Just want you to know I always thought something was off about Holden's story. Funny how quickly people choose sides when they realize which side is winning. Holden begins to panic, sensing the family's faith in him waver. He tightens control, calls more meetings, but each move plays right into my plan. He scheduled a family meeting at his lawyer's office. He wanted to present his case before things got worse. He wanted to convince everyone that he deserved sole control. I showed up with Margaret. She brought copies of every document, certified copies, legal copies, binding copies. Holden's lawyer tried to argue that the dual signature clause was outdated, that it didn't represent Dad's actual intentions, that I was being vindictive. Margaret calmly explained that Dad had made his intentions very clear, multiple times, in writing, in a legally binding will. Delaney's position is unassailable, Margaret said. Your client cannot proceed with major transactions without her consent. Holden's face turned purple. He accused me of sabotaging him. He said I was jealous. He claimed I was destroying the family. I'm protecting what Dad left us, I said quietly. Nothing more. The family saw right through him. They saw a man throwing a tantrum because his lies had been exposed. They saw someone trying to manipulate the situation rather than accepting the legal reality. That meeting was the turning point. I file notices confirming my authority over several key properties. Holden tries to counter, but I anticipated every move. Every legal response is met with calm, precise action. Margaret filed the paperwork. Official documentation with the city, the bank, and the property records office. Documents stating that Delaney Thompson holds equal authority over all properties in the Thompson estate. Holden tried to file a counterclaim. He argued that the original deeds were forged, that I had fabricated the evidence, that Margaret was biased in my favor. None of it stuck, 'cause I had the originals, because the documents were certified, because the law was very clear on this matter. His lawyer sent letters. I responded through Margaret with documentation that made his letters look ridiculous. He tried every angle, every strategy, every legal maneuver, and every single one failed because I had prepared for them. I had evidence, I had the law on my side. I had the original documents that proved everything. After 3 weeks, his lawyer advised him to stop fighting. Holden attempts to bribe a family lawyer to remove me from the picture. I let him try, then report it. I found out from Aunt Patricia. Holden had approached her friend Vincent, a lawyer who'd done some work for the family over the years. Holden offered him money, a lot of money, if Vincent could find a way to invalidate my claim to the properties. Vincent reported it immediately. Holden was attempting to obstruct justice, attempting to suborn a lawyer. Both of those are serious crimes. I contacted Margaret. She contacted the Bar Association. Suddenly, Holden wasn't just fighting legal battles. He was fighting criminal investigation. His stupidity was truly astounding. He'd gone from being the golden boy to being a criminal defendant in the span of a few weeks. All because he couldn't accept that he didn't have absolute control. This move alone was going to destroy him. I present Holden's mistakes, along with original documents, at a family council meeting. The room goes silent. Every exaggeration, every lie, every forged signature exposed. We gathered in Margaret's office conference room. The whole family, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who mattered. Margaret presented the evidence systematically. The original deeds, the city records, the bank documents, the emails showing Holden's attempts to sell properties without proper authorization. Then she presented the criminal complaint. The attempted bribery of Vincent. The attempted obstruction of justice. I watched Holden's face as reality crashed down on him. He'd built this entire empire of lies, and it was collapsing in real time. Your father's will is very clear, Margaret said. He wanted both of his children involved in major decisions. He didn't trust Holden alone. He didn't trust Delaney alone. He trusted the two of them together. The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Holden violated that trust, Margaret continued. He attempted fraud. He attempted to sell properties he didn't have authority to sell. He destroyed documents. He attempted to bribe an officer of the court. No one looked at Holden. Everyone looked at me. Holden loses composure. Anger, shame, and disbelief twist across his face. I remain composed. I let him speak, knowing every word only strengthens my case. This is insane, he shouted. You're all believing her. You're believing the quiet accountant over me. No one responded. I built businesses, he said. I took care of Dad when he was sick. That was a lie. I was the one who took care of Dad. I was the one there every single day. I earned this, he continued. I earned the right to control the properties. By forging documents. I asked quietly. By attempting to sell property you didn't have authority to sell? He turned on me. You're jealous. You've always been jealous. You're a nobody, Delaney. You're nothing. And you're trying to drag me down because you can't stand to see me succeed. His voice broke. Actual tears appeared in his eyes. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage. Tears of someone who'd been caught and was losing control. Aunt Vivian stood up. That's enough, Holden. He stopped talking. He realized he was losing. He realized that his charm wasn't working anymore. He realized that the family had seen who he really was, and they didn't like it. I quietly reclaim critical properties while Holden scrambles, trying desperately to maintain influence. His own overconfidence ensured he would fail. Margaret worked quickly to transfer the properties into proper documentation. Half the portfolio went into my name alone. Half went into a trust that required both signatures. Holden wasn't allowed to touch anything without my consent. He wasn't allowed to make major decisions. He wasn't even allowed to rent out spaces without approval. For the first time in weeks I felt actual peace. The properties were protected. The family understood the truth. Holden's lies had been exposed. He tried desperately to salvage something. He offered compromises. He apologized for being too aggressive. He claimed he'd been under stress. But the damage was done. The family saw him differently now. Everyone saw him as someone who'd been willing to commit fraud to get what he wanted. Someone who'd been willing to betray his sister. Someone who'd been willing to destroy trust. There was no coming back from that. Holden loses nearly everything he controlled. The family finally acknowledges my authority. I stay calm, dignified, showing strength without malice. The final legal judgment came 3 months later. Holden had no claim to sole ownership. The dual signature requirement stood. I held equal authority with him on all major decisions. The family acknowledged my role at the reunion that summer. Aunt Patricia actually pulled me aside and apologized for not supporting me sooner. My uncle admitted he'd misjudged me. Even my cousins seemed to see me differently now. I wasn't the invisible one anymore. I was the one who'd protected the family legacy. I was the one who'd had the courage to stand up for what was right. But I wasn't cruel about it. I didn't rub Holden's face in his defeat. I simply moved forward. I started renovating the properties. I invested in the buildings. I made smart decisions that increased their value. Holden tried to stay involved, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. He knew he'd been beaten. He knew I was smarter than him. And he knew everyone else knew it too. I walked through my father's estate, holding the original documents. I realized the power of patience, intelligence, and composure. The win isn't just about property, it's about proving myself. I stood in the commercial building on a Tuesday afternoon. The same building Holden had tried to sell to his friend. I walked through every hallway, every office, every empty space. This was what Dad had built. This was what he'd trusted me to protect. Not just the physical buildings but the legacy. The family business. The proof that someone quiet could be just as strong as someone loud. I pulled out the original documents from the manila folder. They were worn now. And old. Real. Dad had known. He'd known that Holden was charming but reckless. He'd known that I was careful but strong. He'd known that the best protection was to force them to work together, to require them both to make decisions. He'd trusted me. He'd given me these documents with the simple instruction to keep them safe. And I had. Not just kept them safe but used them wisely. Used them strategically. Used them to prove that I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the overlooked sister anymore. Holden leaves, stripped of influence and credibility. I reclaim Dad's legacy fully, not with vengeance, but with rightful strategic authority. I feel pride, strength, and hope. The family finally sees me for who I truly am, and no one doubts it again. 6 months later, Holden left the state. He said he was taking a job in another city. Everyone knew the truth. He was running away from the shame. He was running away from a situation he couldn't charm his way out of. I didn't feel bad about it. I didn't feel guilty. He'd tried to commit fraud. He'd tried to steal what wasn't his. He'd tried to erase me from the story. I'd simply responded with truth and strategy. The properties thrived under my management. I hired a competent team. I made smart renovations. I increased profitability. The portfolio that Dad had built grew even stronger. And the family saw me. Finally, they asked my advice about investments. They called me when they needed guidance on business matters. They introduced me to people as Delaney, who runs the Thompson Estate properties. I was no longer the invisible sister. I was no longer the overlooked one. I was the woman who'd had the intelligence to wait for the right moment, and the strength to take what was rightfully hers. I'd proven something that day. Not just to my family but to myself. I was strong enough to stand alone. I was smart enough to win without being cruel. I was strategic enough to understand that patience is more powerful than anger. And no one would ever doubt me again.